It was a typical Thursday evening in a small, upscale restaurant tucked away in the heart of the city. Known for its quiet atmosphere and exclusivity, the restaurant attracted a steady stream of loyal customers. Most of them were regulars, people who appreciated good food, fine wine, and an experience where they could escape the noise of the outside world. The restaurant was the kind of place where reservations were highly recommended, and if you didn't have one, you might find yourself turned away. The owner, a man named David, prided himself on the quality of his establishment. He had built the reputation from scratch, always ensuring that everything was perfect, from the menu to the service. No one ever left disappointed. However, David also had a strict rule about the way things were done. He liked order. He liked control. He believed in running his restaurant with precision. But that night, something was about to happen that would change everything. The evening began like any other, with a gentle hum of conversation filling the air. Little did David know, one small mistake was about to send things spiraling in a direction no one could have predicted. It wasn't long before the quiet hum of the restaurant was interrupted by the soft creak of the door opening. Heads turned. The usual dinner crowd paused mid-conversation, their eyes locking onto the figure who had just stepped inside. Keanu Reeves. He walked in with a calm demeanor, dressed casually, as though he were just another person looking for a good meal. His presence, however, was unmistakable. The staff froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. There was no denying it. One of the biggest movie stars in the world was standing right there, just feet away from them. The hostess, a young woman named Sarah, glanced nervously at David, the owner. She had read about Keanu visiting different cities but never imagined he'd show up at their little spot. The buzz in the air was electric. Some of the diners leaned over to whisper to each other, trying to confirm it was really him. Keanu, completely unaware of the stir he'd caused, greeted Sarah with a simple smile. "Hi there, I have a reservation under Reeves." His voice was as calm and polite as anyone could hope for. Sarah nodded, quickly pulling up the reservation book, still in shock. This was a moment most people only dreamed of. But for Keanu, it was just another night out. He didn't act like a star, just a man hoping for a quiet dinner. Everything seemed to be going smoothly at first. Sarah led Keanu to a cozy corner table, where he sat down, still looking relaxed and friendly. The restaurant had a soft, elegant atmosphere with dim lighting, and Keanu appeared to be in the mood for a peaceful evening. He ordered a glass of wine, something light, and waited patiently for his meal. However, things started to take a turn when the staff encountered a small problem. The reservation system had a glitch, and Sarah quickly realized there was no record of Keanu's reservation in the book. She double-checked the system, hoping it was just a mistake. But the more she searched, the more it seemed like the reservation had never been made. Nervously, she approached David, the owner. "There's a problem," she whispered. "Keanu Reeves is here, but his reservation isn't showing up." David frowned. He wasn't used to things going wrong. This was a well-run establishment, and he liked it that way. A celebrity, yes, but a customer all the same. However, he didn't recognize Keanu at first. The stress of the moment clouded his judgment. He was more focused on the issue of the missing reservation than who was sitting at that table. "I don't care who he is," David muttered under his breath, his voice barely audible. "We have rules for a reason." David's frustration grew as he asked Sarah to seat Keanu at a smaller table, even though the one he had reserved was much better. Keanu, ever the gentleman, didn't object, but the tension in the air was clear. Moments later, the conflict escalated. When the waiter mistakenly delivered the wrong order, David's patience finally snapped. He marched over to Keanu's table, his voice rising above the quiet conversations around them. "I'm sorry, but you'll have to leave," David said firmly. "We've had enough problems with your reservation." Keanu looked up, slightly taken aback. He had done nothing wrong, but he could feel the sharpness in David's words. "I just wanted to have dinner," Keanu replied softly, trying to defuse the situation. David, his frustration blinding him, insisted. "You need to leave now. We can't serve you." The restaurant fell silent. It was a moment that no one would soon forget. As Keanu gathered his things preparing to leave, David stood there, his anger still simmering. He could feel the eyes of the other diners on him, Whispers spread quickly around the room, and the atmosphere became thick with tension. But as Keanu stood and turned to walk out, something clicked in David's mind. It wasn't the face in front of him. It wasn't the man who had just been kicked out of his restaurant. It was the name. Keanu Reeves. David's heart skipped a beat. His mind raced. This wasn't just any customer. This was Keanu Reeves, the actor known for his kindness, humility, and fame. The man who had helped countless people. The man who had inspired millions with his roles in movies like The Matrix and John Wick. David's chest tightened. How could he not have recognized him earlier? As the door swung shut behind Keanu, David stood frozen, a wave of regret washing over him. The realization hit hard. He'd just kicked out one of the most beloved figures in Hollywood, a man known for his grace, not for making a scene. David quickly turned to Sarah, who was equally stunned by the turn of events. "Did you know?" he asked, his voice shaking. "That was Keanu Reeves." Sarah nodded, her eyes wide. "I thought so, but I didn't want to say anything." David's face turned pale. He couldn't believe it. He'd made a huge mistake, a mistake that couldn't easily be undone. The regret settled in deep, and it felt like a weight on his chest. How could he fix this? David couldn't stop replaying the scene in his head. The way he had treated Keanu, the way he had been so harsh. Every detail made his stomach turn. He had made a rash decision, letting his frustration get the best of him. And now, a quiet dinner had turned into a massive mistake. He needed to make it right. That night, after closing the restaurant, David sat in his office, his hands trembling. He picked up the phone and dialed the number for the restaurant's reservation system, hoping they had a contact for Keanu's booking. After what felt like an eternity, someone picked up. "Yes, I need to get in touch with Keanu Reeves," David said, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's urgent." The person on the other end seemed a little confused but agreed to pass on a message. David explained the situation, how he had mistakenly kicked Keanu out and how deeply sorry he was for his actions. He even said he'd offer Keanu a private dinner to make up for it. "I need to fix this," David said, his voice almost pleading. "Please let him know I want to apologize. I've made a huge mistake." Once he hung up, David's mind raced. Would Keanu respond? Would he be angry? Or would he just brush it off and never think about it again? The uncertainty gnawed at David. He didn't want to lose the chance to make things right, but he also knew that some mistakes couldn't be undone so easily. Still, he hoped, with all his heart, that Keanu would hear him out. David paced back and forth, waiting for a reply, knowing that the outcome of this moment could change everything for him and his restaurant. The next morning, David received a call. His heart raced as he picked up the phone, almost bracing himself for the worst. "Hello, is this David?" a calm voice asked. It was Keanu's assistant. David swallowed, his palms sweating. "Yes, this is David. I left a message about what happened last night." There was a brief silence, and then the assistant spoke again. "Keanu's aware of the situation. He's not upset. He just wanted to let you know that it was all a misunderstanding. He understands how stressful things can get in the restaurant business." David exhaled a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "He's not angry?" The assistant chuckled lightly. "Not at all. Keanu's a pretty easygoing guy. He just wanted to let you know that he's fine. He also wanted to thank you for reaching out." David's relief was immediate, but something else began to sink in. "Can you tell him that I'm deeply sorry? I should never have acted the way I did." There was a pause on the other end. "Keanu appreciates the apology, David. He'd like to come back to the restaurant if you're still open to it. To that, he says, this is all water under the bridge." David could hardly believe what he was hearing. Keanu, the same man who had been kicked out the night before, was willing to come back? "Of course. Please let him know that I'll make it right. We'd be honored to have him back." After hanging up, David felt a mix of emotions. Relief, gratitude, and something deeper. A sense of humility. Keanu's kindness had shone through in a way that David hadn't expected. There was no bitterness, no sense of entitlement. Just grace. David reflected on the conversation, thinking about how much Keanu's response had taught him. It wasn't just about fixing a mistake anymore. It was about learning from it, becoming a better person and a better owner in the process. When Keanu arrived back at the restaurant, David was ready. He greeted him at the door, his heart racing, But this time, he was determined to make the evening perfect. Keanu was as kind and humble as ever. He didn't hold the past against David, and he immediately put the owner at ease. "It's all good, David," Keanu said with a warm smile. "I understand how things can get out of hand sometimes." David showed him to the best table in the house, making sure everything was exactly how Keanu would want it. The tension from the previous night was long gone, replaced with a sense of calm and respect. As the evening went on, the staff was more attentive than ever, wanting to make up for their earlier mistakes. The restaurant's usual atmosphere of quiet elegance returned, but now there was a sense of gratitude that filled the air. Every dish was perfect, and the wine was poured just right. Keanu seemed genuinely happy, enjoying the meal and chatting casually with the staff. But David wasn't just focused on the evening itself. The whole situation had taught him something valuable. He realized that running a restaurant wasn't just about making sure everything was perfect on the surface. It was about treating everyone with respect, no matter who they were. Whether it was a regular customer or a celebrity like Keanu, every person deserved the same level of care and attention. The following day, David made a point to sit down with his staff. They talked about how to handle situations like this one, making sure everyone was trained to treat every guest, no matter their status, with kindness and fairness. David wasn't just fixing a mistake, he was changing the culture of his restaurant for the better. The incident with Keanu had taught him that even the smallest mistakes could lead to bigger lessons, and that humility and grace were the keys to moving forward. As the weeks passed, the incident with Keanu Reeves began to fade into the past, but its impact lingered in the restaurant. David had taken the lessons he learned to heart, and things at the restaurant began to shift. The staff, now more attentive and empathetic, treated every guest with the same respect, regardless of who they were. It wasn't just about making a good impression anymore. It was about making sure every person who walked through the door felt valued. The customers noticed the difference. Regulars who had been coming for years commented on how the atmosphere seemed even warmer, more welcoming. Word spread that the restaurant had turned a corner. The event with Keanu, as strange and uncomfortable as it had been, had brought about real change. But perhaps the most surprising outcome of all was David's own personal transformation. He began to understand the true value of humility and how it could shape not only his business, but his relationships with others. He learned that being kind, listening more, and being open to growth were far more important than being perfect. And though Keanu's visit was just one night, his effect on the restaurant and on David was lasting. The owner often thought back to that moment, realizing that Keanu's quiet grace had taught him something invaluable. It wasn't just about fixing a mistake. It was about becoming a better person through it.